So a property inventory is an important document. It has two aspects. There's the inventory itself, and then there's a schedule of condition. These are usually combined within the same document. The inventory tells us about what is present in the property in terms of movable objects such as chairs, tables, so forth. And the schedule of condition tells us about the fabric of the property, the fixed items such as walls, doors, windows, the things that aren't movable. So combined in one document, this gives us a good record of what is present in the property at the time the tenant moves in. So the inventory would normally be prepared just a few days before the tenant moves in. An inventory clerk would go to the property and they would record what they see. So using a tape recorder they would go around. They'd start at the ceiling, perhaps work their way down, include paint, wallpaper, skirting boards, including what they see in terms of colour, condition, whether the items have been marked in any way. And all of these things would be recorded and typed out into a document to be signed by the tenant. So the document needs to be ready before the tenant moves in. It's no good trying to prepare it once the tenant is in. The day the tenant moves in, the check-in day, would normally be when the tenant gets the opportunity to look at the document and go through it with the agent to make sure that it is an accurate representation of what is in the property. Sometimes this is impossible because the tenant may not be there or the agent may not be able to be there on the day. So there's normally an inclusion that says that the tenant has to check and return the inventory within 7 days in order for their amendments to be included. And it's good to get any misunderstandings sorted before more than a week has gone by. So you might ask, why have an inventory? What's the point of it? Well, the inventory actually forms part of the tenancy agreement, and a good tenancy agreement like the ALA agreement that we use would include the inventory as an appendix to the tenancy agreement. And it's very important that you do this, even with an unfurnished property, because at the end of the tenancy you're going to want to know if the property has been returned in the same condition as it was let out originally. So at the end of the tenancy, the agent would go to the property or the inventory clerk and check off the inventory and make sure that everything was still there. And they'd be looking for signs of damage, signs of wear and tear, any negligent use of items. So this gives a record of what has happened in the property throughout the tenancy. Obviously a tenant is allowed to have fair wear and tear. It's quite normal for things to wear out as people use them. And the agent and the landlord have to allow for that when looking at the deposit deduction at the end of the tenancy, if that's necessary. So the inventory helps us to do this. It helps us to see if anything has been done in the property which wouldn't be normal, which wouldn't be allowable under the tenancy agreement. So having done this, then you would look at the tenant's deposit and allowing for fair wear and tear. You would say, well, is it reasonable to deduct money on the basis of any damage? Under the latest version of the Housing Act, a tenant's deposit will be held under a protected scheme. And these schemes have a built-in dispute service that allows the landlord and the tenant to look at the deposit and resolve any issues that they may have around deductions that the landlord feels should be made from the deposit. The thing about this is that the law requires that if the landlord is unable to produce proof that the property has been damaged, if they can't back up their claim for deduction, the resolution service has to, by law, side with the tenant, and therefore you can't make the deposit deduction unless you have some evidence to back up your claim. So this is why it's really important for landlords to have an inventory.